Hello everyone, welcome back to another light novel review. I am the Rat, and this is the Rat's Nest. That it's still weird to say. The third one in on my comeback to light novels, and it's still odd to say light novel. I'm not used to it. Today we are here with the Eminence in Shadow, Volume 4. I love the Eminence in Shadow. If you watched my last video, which you probably didn't, but that's okay. That's fine. It's fine. Okay. You know that I love this series very much. It is my second favorite light novel series, right after Mushoku Tensei. I love the manga as well. There's just so many other great manga that I love. Not saying there's not other great, whatever. I think light novel's the best, right? And I love the manga as well. We have the Eminence in Shadow Volume 4. This was one of my favorite light novels I've ever read, by far. It is up there with the upper echelons. I don't know if I could call it my favorite light novel I've ever read, but it's certainly a contender. It's one of my favorites that I've ever read. Daisuke Aizawa just gets better and better, right? So the first three light novels were based off the web novel, which I've read. I've read the web novel. I'm completely caught up with it, right? So I was really looking forward to Volume 4 and seeing how is Daisuke Aizawa going to be taking this series going forward, right? Because I enjoyed the web novel, but it was definitely a lot of what we saw of his writing style of saying, I want to do this now, I want to do this, and that's fine, right? It's fine to go back and forth on the different ideas and to be like, I want to write an arc where this happens, or I want to write an arc where that happens. Completely fine, completely valid, right? But I do think that the web novel maybe had... It was a bit unorganized. Now, it's been 3 years since I've read the web novel at this point. You'll have to forgive me if I forget details. But as far as I remember, the plot never really progressed. And you say, what's the plot in the Eminence in Shadow, right? You know, and that's a good question. I'd say that Volume 4 progressed the plot, right? Especially looking at the first story. The Oriana Kingdom arc, if we want to call it that. It's two arcs, the Oriana Kingdom and then Otherworld, Earth, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how the community refers to the arcs. I'll probably just call it the Earth arc or something. I don't know. I'll refer to it how I'll refer to it, right? I would say that, like, the web novel was very fun with everything it did, but it was, it was unorganized, and, that's what web novels are, right? So whenever I heard that he was going on a different path for light novel 4, I was really excited because I trusted him to write it well. I love the way that he writes. I love his series, and after The Eminence in Shadow, should his other work be translated, should he write other things, I would definitely love to pick it up. But man, this book was absolutely phenomenal. So starting off with, this is actually the second ever light novel review I've done without notes. I didn't write notes while reading this. I read it very quickly. I just wanted to get through it. I loved every second of it, man. This is such a good book. And so we're just going to go through. We have the first arc, the Oriana Kingdom arc. I think that this was great, right? Personally, I read most of this in the manga before I got to here. Because I was caught up to about chapter 40-ish of the manga over the summer. I started reading the manga 3 years ago. I read the manga before I read the web novel. And so I got up to about chapter 40. I had been slacking a little bit over the summer. And then coming into this, after the anime started, I decided to catch fully up to the manga. So I caught up to chapter 45. I know 46 is out at the time of recording. I haven't gotten to it yet. I will read it maybe tonight. I don't know. But I read most of what is covered in this arc in the manga. I think it adapted it really well. I enjoyed being able to read the manga and then to read the light novel. It's such an improvement, I feel, over the web novel. I don't know other people's consensus on it, and I don't really care. I feel like it was a great improvement over the web novel, because I think Rose's character was one of the ones that suffered the most from the web novel, where here's this character, she's doing stuff, right? She's a relatively integral character, right? I would call her one of the 3 most developed characters in The Eminence in Shadow. here you have her, and she actually does stuff this arc. I can't remember exactly what she did in the web novel, but I don't remember her doing a lot. I really remember being kind of disappointed with how her character kind of never went anywhere, and there was a lot of mystery around her. So I enjoy just having an arc like, okay, Rose is this. Let's get Rose's stuff settled, right? And I think it was settled well. The comedy is always phenomenal, especially in this arc. I mean, what can I say about the comedy that hasn't already been said? Everything from the Sid's situational awareness to everyone's misunderstandings to just, the core of the comedy being how can Sid perfectly do everything and not notice and just perfectly wrap everything up. Oh man, it's good. Especially how I still think the counterfeit arc from Volume 3 was the more complicated. How did Sid pull this off? But this one was pretty good too, where he just inadvertently stole a ring because he was like, yeah, it looks like money. Just so happened to be the ring that was important to this thing that Rose was connected to, that she just so happened to be in Shadow Garden to be connected to that. And then she just so happened to see her mother with sets of plots in motion. And Sid just so happened to be in the Oriana Kingdom after running from Delta at the end of the last one. It's just everything lined up perfectly. It's good. And then Epsilon already being there. I loved the parts with Epsilon where she was trying to get in specifically where she was trying to get into the door. She's like, I need the key. And he's like, what? No, you don't. And he's like, you've already picked the door. And she's like, oh, I don't. And she's like, he's already figured it out. And then he just inadvertently loses it at the perfect time. I would say, man, it's good. Yeah, I could sit here and explain the jokes all day, but it's so well written. I can't imagine. Daisuke Aizawa is a very talented author. I don't think any of the jokes that he's written have fallen flat, at least for me personally. One of my favorite sections from this arc, I'd say probably my favorite section in general, was the conversation between Sid and Rose whenever he was playing piano, right? That whole section, I love the misunderstanding between Rose and Sid that leads to, Rose being like, oh, he loves me. Sid being like, oh, she wants power like I do. And that leads to a very natural conversation where it's weird. Rose probably knows like the real Sid better than a lot of other characters because he's very genuine whenever he talks to her. Now, of course, she misunderstands that genuineness and the origin of it. But I think that how genuine he is with her is a very special relationship the two of them share, even if it's not intended in the way she's taking it. I love that whole misunderstanding thing, and oh my gosh, and just viewing it from the outside, like it's really good writing. Like I'm a sucker for these kinds of stories, anyways. Even without the humor, it's genuinely interesting. This quote unquote main plot that is in the background and everything. Daisuke Aizawa, he's a very talented author. I've said that a ton. It's true. He's a very talented author. I'll say it more. It's very well written. It's very engaging. I think Rose's character is absolutely phenomenal. She's, like I said, I would say definitely she's the second most developed character in the Eminence in Shadow, right after Sid. And I love that for her. I think it's great because she's just written so well. She's written so believably with everything she's gone through. I tell you, of all the characters, right? Obviously, Sid is like, I need a protagonist, right? Protagonist for the main story. It's Rose, right? Rose is, if nothing else, one of the protagonists, especially at this point where Alexia has received not very much attention, and Rose has definitely become one of the most central characters to the Eminence in Shadow. She's definitely makes the best case for the protagonist, right? It's so good, and just the way everything was written with the final conclusion, getting to meet the ninth seat, Mordred, was cool. Just once again knowing, Sid solos anyone, right? Whenever that's his whole shtick. He's the Eminence in Shadow. He has to be able to disperse a people without issue, and he can. That's not where the tension from the battles comes from. It was interesting to see that Beta and Epsilon did not struggle against Mordred whatsoever. I'm not too interested in the power scaling of the cult of Diabolus, but it's still interesting to see. It's very interesting to see. Also getting to see that Rose is also very strong. Again, strength doesn't really matter. The focus of the series is on the comedy and the characters. But it's fun to see and to look at. It's very interesting. Me, big power scaling guy, so yeah, just all in all, this arc was absolutely amazing. The moment where Rose's father came out and was speaking through the ring to the crowd, that was like, man, it's well written. It's very well written. I'll keep saying it because it keeps being true. It's very well written. I won't say that I cried during it. I've read some stuff online where people are like, this is literally the saddest scene. No, but it's very nice. I think it shows a lot of the King's character that we didn't get to see, and he's a relatively important character. I don't think we needed to see it, but it just adds more depth to Rose's character and more stuff to build off of going forward. I think the twists were very good with Duke Perv and Rose's mom. I think that was a very good twist. I loved how Shadow or Sid reacted, where he's like, what? Oh man, very, very good writing. I loved it. I think that this was the perfect way to handle Rose's story, because it happened in one arc. It makes sense, and now she's a relatively free character going forward, where she will be the new queen of Oriana. Relatively free character. I don't know if she'll ever take a starring role in another arc like she did in this one, simply due to her new position. But she might. I definitely think she'll be a background character for some of the arcs. Kind of like how Alexia was a very minor background character in the Counterfeit arc. I think that might be the role she takes from here on as we develop some of the other characters. Or she could continue to be a central focus. I think that'd be very interesting to see. Well, whatever he does, I think Daisuke Aizawa will do a good job with it. I definitely think going forward, we're going to get more development into some of the other characters, like maybe Alexia and Claire. Maybe we'll see Sherry again. I don't know. So this is getting into the next arc. I want to see more development for Akane, right? And so this is the second arc of book 4, which is, I loved Oriana, right? I think it was immensely well written. Oh my gosh. The second part, the Isekai arc, basically. That's what it is. It's an Isekai arc, right? It was so good. It was, oh my gosh. I eat stuff like that for breakfast. It was the perfect mix of the comedy of the Eminence and Shadow, right? That you come to expect, right? With just a story and characters and settings and plot points that I would read any day of the week, right? Oh my gosh, that's why I use the wording one of my favorite light novels instead of one of the best light novels I've ever read, right? Because it's subjective. I can understand if you don't like this kind of story, maybe it could be a bit of a turnoff and you wouldn't view it as highly as I did. But man, I also acknowledge my own bias with it in saying, it's one of my favorite, not one of the best necessarily. I'd have to think about the best light novels I've ever read, but oh my gosh, I love this. So I've been watching the anime, right, before reading this. So the first episode of the anime, I was like, who are these people? I was like, what? I was like, Sid. I was like, Minoru, what? I was like, this makes no sense. I was like, you're giving Sid a name. I was like, you're going back, you're introducing this new character that I've never heard of, right? And, I'll probably talk about the Eminence and Shadow anime once it's done airing, but I have been really enjoying it. And I read online whenever this was all happening. That was in book 4. I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. I was like, so it's more establishment for the future. I kind of do love that they put that at the beginning of the anime, because it shows, I wouldn't say a 100% commitment, right, to adapting book 4, but introducing these characters like that show that the potential is there, right, for in the future them to adapt this material. Maybe after light novel 5 is out, and then you can adapt more into one season, because we're getting 20 episodes, I think, for the Eminence and Shadow anime. it starts off where the last one ends, where there's the Black Rose, yada yada, all of Mordred's plan. It was fun. It was Eminence and Shadow stuff, right? So that was stuff happening in the background essentially, and Sid just on a whim jumps into it. It's like, wouldn't that be a cool accident? And Beta goes after him, and so then it's Sid and Beta, and they're back in Earth, and I was like, this is so. I love. What do you call it? Spoilers for Rising of the Shield Hero Season 2. I love the Isekai thing. I love where they go to a different world from their different world. It's so neat. And Eminence and Shadow is so much cooler because they go back to Sid's original world, at least as far as we know. It's pretty confirmed. I don't know why it wouldn't be. I don't know why it'd be a world that similar. But it has magic in it, right? And so magic appeared 2 years after Sid died. We don't know why, but it did. Now, my question is, so at the end, he was introduced, and I'll talk, I'm going off on a little tangent here. I'll go back right now. I'll refocus myself. This is the problem with not having notes. So they get sent in, right? They're going around, they get clothes. Beta, haha, funny gags. Humor in this arc is on point, right? I don't want to go down and explain every joke. I loved the humor. I loved all of it. I thought it was very good. And they go around, and it's the little demon monster thingies have invaded this world with magic. And, I've started wiping out humanity, yada, yada. I love these post-apocalyptic plots, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And they go to an abandoned hospital. Obviously, Beta and Sid are extremely overpowered. They deal with them, no problem. Akane, and we get introduced to Akane. I think she's a great character. I cannot wait to see more of her going forward. She was presented in such a different way throughout this arc than I thought she was going to be, because from the introduction I saw in the anime and then read in the light novel, I thought she was going to be pretty generic tsundere. I guess we have that in Alexia, right? That's kind of how I thought she would be. I thought she'd be cold, more tsundere-ish. That's not what we got at all. She's she has her baggage, right? Like, every protagonist-y character would, right? She's got her secret hidden powers, right? But she's not. She's very open and very welcoming towards Sid, or Minoru as he's known here. It's just a random name that he chooses for himself. My random name, I mean his old name, yada yada. It's always interesting to hear protagonists' old names. I think it can be done very well without hearing them. I almost prefer to not hear them. Whenever, in the case of reincarnation, just like Mushoku Tensei, we never learn Rudeus' past name. I think that's amazing thematically, right? But, learning Sid's old name is cool. So it's like, oh, he was Minoru Kageno, right? Interesting that he should have Kageno, whatever. The Japanese translation is the same in both worlds. Very interesting. I don't think it means anything, but hey, maybe it does. I don't know. I think I loved the way that she was presented. I loved her interactions with everything. I loved... she's probably one of my favorite characters right now in the Eminence and Shadow. She was just portrayed so well, I feel, and I loved seeing her interactions with Sid, where she very obviously has, deep-rooted trauma, and she's 20. She's legal, so that's another plus for her, right? She was written very well. I think all the stuff with her was written very well. I can't wait to see where her character goes, really. I think the ending of this arc where they kind of abandoned this Earth world was very, very interesting. I could see her becoming a very central character going forward. Of course, I don't know if Daisuke Aizawa will do that. He's definitely an author to write what he wants to write, and that's completely fine. Togashi's like that from Hunter x Hunter. I hope we get to see more of her. I think her backstory was very interesting. I think with the whole thing where like magic was introduced to this world, and Mordred's explanation back in the Oriana Kingdom arc, where the explanation of the different realms. I love it when Isekai explain why they're Isekai. I think that's great. I think that's great whenever they give an explanation. I don't doubt that we will eventually figure out the exact time that Sid came over. Will everyone else ever figure out that Sid comes from another world? I don't know. I'd say if they do, Akane will probably be the catalyst for that, where we're going to be learning a lot more from her regarding shadow knowledge, right? She's going to come in here, and she's going to see, and Sid doesn't know that she's here, right? She's going to come in here, and she's going to see everything that Sid has done and be like, hey, I know this too. Like, this is all common knowledge in our world. I really think the Seven Shadows might get the impression that Sid has come from another world. That would explain the shadow knowledge. That would explain all his other knowledge. That would explain how smart, in their eyes, that would explain how smart he is. That would explain a lot of things if he came from another world, especially if the other world has magic, as Akane would probably tell them. She might also tell them that it didn't always have magic, right? It will take. So Beta is going to be the translator, right? I think Akane and Beta are going to spend a lot of time together. Will we see them next arc? I don't know. We don't. I don't think we know what Sid's whereabouts are. I think it said that there was trouble in the Midgar Kingdom at the end of this, so we're probably going back. I think we'll take an Akane break for an arc, and then hopefully get back into her at the end of the second arc. But I think the rest of the arc was absolutely awesome. I loved all the characters being introduced. I loved the world there. I loved Sid just going out and just mindlessly beating these things, and they were like, it's like a grand alpha. And he was like known as the Black Knight, and he was like, the wind is weeping, and they're like undoubtedly those words had a weight to them undeniable to anyone that heard them. And he's like, yes, finally got to use that line. Humor in this arc, absolutely impeccable. I really enjoyed learning more about the system in the world. You got Akane's older brother, who obviously died. I thought we might have spent more time in this world than just an arc. But hey, more power to Daisuke Aizawa. I guess he wanted to move this story forward. It would have been an interesting premise, but also I guess you can only go so far with it. I do wonder if we'll ever come back to the world in the future, because we did end it off in a bit of an odd place, where we take Akane, who's kind of like the strongest one here. Sure, he defeated that wave, right? I don't know if that got rid of the nest, but Akira's dead. Akane is gone and presumed dead. The doctor chick, whose name I can't remember, and she was a traitor. I did quite enjoy that twist. I can't believe I didn't catch on to it sooner, but I caught on to it whenever the two guys came in after Sid told her that he was about the gunshot thing, and those two guys came in. I was like, oh, she's a traitor. Okay, so she's the spy. A little embarrassing to catch on to that sooner, but that was very interesting. She's gone, and so that's three big ones. And you have the other guy that died. I can't remember his name. Right? You have him that died. So that leaves this place a very interesting crossroads. Also, with how central I almost feel the Black Knight, Sid, has become to this world, it'll be very interesting to see if he ever comes back, right? Maybe this is also his original world. I could definitely see him probably coming back. I think it'd be fun to come back and see. Maybe Akane's goal will be to come back to this world, because she still has ties to it, right? She doesn't know that her brother is dead. At least as far as I know, she doesn't know that her brother's dead, right? All she knows is that she was saved by Minoru, right? I'll talk on that. I do want to talk on that. And she knows that she's in a new world now. I think her goal could definitely be getting back. I think it's just going to be very interesting going forward. I loved the arc. You have all the misunderstanding stuff. Beta learning English in 2 days. The little online chat segment where Beta calls Shadow cringe. Oh my gosh, that entire section is so good. Humor in the point is amazing. Whatever. I loved this part so much. Getting into the future with Akane. I cannot wait for her to meet Sid. Not Shadow. Well, Shadow too, but Sid. Right? Because Sid came to Earth, right? He came to this new world. His face will be the same, I believe. So she's going to see Sid, and she's going to be like, well, you're Minoru. Right? She doesn't know that the Minoru she met was Minoru himself, as far as I know. But she knows that Minoru is alive. So here's the interesting thing, right? Not counting Sid himself or Shadow Garden. There are 4 characters that know that Sid is Shadow. Well, 3, 1 debatable, right? Well, 2, 1 debatable, 1 technically. So, actually, no, wait, no, there's 5. There's 5. I had the number in my head and then I couldn't remember. So, the obvious ones out of the way. The ones that know that Sid is Shadow, not counting Shadow Garden, right? Not counting Shadow Garden, not counting Sid. You have Aurora. Aurora knows Sid is Shadow. It's just established. Elizabeth knows that Sid is Shadow. I don't know if we'll ever see Elizabeth again. I kind of doubt it, except for maybe more an endgame thing or the kind of cameo appearance. She knows Sid is Shadow. And then the vice principal guy from the Sherry's adopted father, Lutheran, or I can't remember his name. He figured out Sid was Shadow in like the last moment of his life. He knew. The debatable one is Rose, right? Does Rose know? Because in Volume 4 specifically, at the end of the Oriana Kingdom arc anyways, you have Rose seeing Shadow, right? And here's exactly what it said. I looked it up. Shadow stands at the very center of the world, raising his jet black sword in the sky. Are you really? Rose starts to say something, then goes quiet. For some reason, two piano players are starting to overlap in her mind. There's no way. It simply isn't possible. Yet she finds herself drawn to Shadow's each and every movement all the same. And a little bit later on the next page, oh, my ring. For some reason, Rose's wedding ring light shatters it as well. Rose takes it as a sign of what's becoming of her beloved. The blood drains from her face. So does Rose know that Sid is Shadow? This would be huge, right? As it's the first character that isn't like an immortal god or dead to know. I think she still has doubts about it. I think that the thought is there where she's like, there's no way that Sid is Shadow, but they're so similar. I think the argument for this comes, and ultimately it comes down to how Daisuke Izawa wants to write it, right? I think if he wants to write it that she doesn't know, it's fine, but just has suspicions, that's fine. It's completely valid. If he wants to write it that she does know, or she has extremely, like really thinks so, but I can't confirm it, and I think that's valid as well. You can go either way with it. I think a strong case for saying that she does know, and you could be like, well, how can she connect with Shadow? Like what I said earlier, Sid has been very genuine with her. Sid has been extremely genuine with her. Now, sure, she understands the meaning of it, right? She thinks he loves him. He doesn't. He's just talking about being an Eminence in Shadow. But he's very passionate, and he's very genuine. We see more of Sid's true personality come out with Rose than with any other character, except for maybe Delta. Delta's a special case, though. We see that with Rose more than any other character. With that, we also know that Shadow is Sid being pretty genuine as well. You know, obviously Shadow is the face he puts on. But a lot of Shadow, the aspects of Shadow, right? Shadow's swordsmanship, Shadow's movements, aside from the way that he acts, right, is very similar. We also see Sid put on a Shadow-like act with playing Moonlight Sonata, right? There's a very Shadow-like act, very, very connected between the two. I think there's a good case to be made that Rose very much could know that Sid is Shadow and could connect those dots and could maybe be working to confirm it whenever we see her next time. Could maybe be, as a member of Shadow, I don't know how involved she'll be with Shadow Garden going forward. As a member of Shadow Garden, theoretically, she could know. We know that members outside of the Seven Shades know that Sid is Shadow, right? Victoria probably, she was introduced in Oriana. I like Victoria, right? I didn't talk on her much. She was interesting, right? She's a lot of the humor, and I was like, it's good. Victoria probably knows. We know that a good amount of the grunts know. I'd say they would probably keep it from Rose simply due to Rose's closeness with Sid himself and how public she is. And, you know, the member of Shadow Gardens typically are very, very private and very much just involved in the organization. If anyone who doesn't know or doesn't technically know, I'll get to that next, that Sid is Shadow were to find out, I think Rose is a great candidate. Again, just because of her importance to the story, I think it also makes sense for her to eventually find out. I think she has the strongest case for someone who's going to find out. Next one, the final one. Technically, Akane knows Sid is Shadow. Technically. Here's why I say that. She knows Minoru is the Black Knight. She doesn't know, but she is 100% confident that Minoru is the Black Knight. Because she knows the Black Knight, she knows Minoru. She knows that she was saved by the Black Knight. She knows that she was saved by Minoru. She knows Minoru is the Black Knight. Right? She has fully connected the two in her mind. She said, Minoru, you survived. Minoru has become the Black Knight. She knows that. Now, technically, she doesn't know that Sid Kageno is Shadow Leader of Shadow Garden. But she knows that Minoru Kageno is the Black Knight. Now, of course, Sid Kageno is Minoru Kageno and the Black Knight is Shadow. They're just different names for the same people. So looking at the commutative property of addition, if A equals C and B equals D, A plus B equals C plus D. Technically, Akane knows Sid is Shadow. That's why it'll be so interesting to get to see her, because she'll see Sid and she'll be like, are you Minoru? Right? So that connection will be there in her mind, and so she'll see Shadow and she'll be like 100%. That is the. And she's also so she's in the care of Shadow Garden. Her running across Shadow is something that's going to happen. She's going to see Shadow. She's going to go, you're the Black Knight, and she's going to say, you're the Black Knight, therefore you're Minoru. And of course, Minoru said, she technically knows. I think we will see that. I also think her being with Shadow Garden shows that, right? She's not out in the public like Rose, and Rose is technically part of Shadow Garden as well. But she'll be around people that know Sid is Shadow. Her learning that Sid is Shadow isn't going to be a huge deal, right? Especially given that her goal is probably going to be getting back to her own world. I'd be very interested to see how she ropes Sid into that. I could make a comparison to a different series. I won't. Just spoiler. The video's gone on long enough. But yeah, I love this book so much. I cannot wait for the next one. Maybe it has something to do with Claire. I read that someone said that. I was like, yeah, it could. I'd love to see more Claire. I think this book is absolutely phenomenal. I love it very much. One of my favorite light novels that I've ever read. And I think that I will leave it at that. I can't wait for book 5. Coming out sometime December, I think, in Japan, and then sometime next year in the U.S. Cannot get here fast enough. I don't want to rush Daisuke Aizawa, but man, I wish he could write faster. I was reading this book, and I was hanging on to every last page. I was like, I don't want this to end. I absolutely love it. It's a good book. It's a very good book. If you haven't read Eminence and Shadow, and for some reason you're this far, go pick it all up. So, all that said, if you're this far in the video, obviously there's something you like, so make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment telling me why Akane is best girl and she will win Sid in the end. She won't, but you can leave a comment telling me why. It'll be very futile, but you can still do it. Be sure to check out Goodie Screens Book Club, link in the description. We go over Bleach. Next video will be, I don't know when this will go up. It'll probably go up on a Friday, maybe, so next video will be a One Piece review. The next review, I haven't decided which I'm going to read, honestly. It will probably be the Spoke Raw Hakushibe. I picked that up recently, and I do kind of want to crack it open, get into it, talk about it with my friend Tyler, who likes JoJo. Or it could be Mushoku Tensei Volume 11, which is up next on my reading list. So whichever that is, I will see you all then. If you all enjoyed this video, bye-bye.